All right, it's 6:08 and we are calling to order our work session right now. And so we're having a work session in the back and we will be back momentarily. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Guys, like a volunteer thing to go do.
Yes. Well, yeah, that's actually, you'll find that's why the city works so well, is because everybody's volunteer.
I think there was a difference there that it was,
Oh, no, yeah, it's not stacked. We don't get paid for this.
or you just tell her it's just like Claude Rains in Casablanca. Just round up the usual suspect.
That's right.
The major has been cut.
What a great movie.
Round up the usual suspect. Yeah, that
That's a controversial opinion.
it's the individual characters and they're really good.
It's well written. It feels way ahead of its time. The dialogue holds forever. Oh, wonderful. So just out of curiosity, and it doesn't have to necessarily be for today, but just for future reference. So if we're making a motion, we're related to the property in question, rather than the address, do we need to do it by the block? In this case, North Lake Woodlands, 3rd section, block 4, lot 18, as opposed to the address?
Yeah, I don't think it makes any difference.
Okay, just making sure.
The reason I put the lot and block in is because I file the deed records. Because once a variance is granted or denied, it's forever. So it goes along with, so when someone buys that property, they'll get a copy of that order will be disclosed in your title, so that they know that what the setback has been buried or not been buried.
Gotcha. Just sometimes it just making sure, because it's probably easier to say something like 552 Arbor Road. Yeah.
And for like our portion of it,
I just kind of reread what the item is.
Yeah.
well, for our portion of it, the street address is the legal address. So if we need like a warrant to be able to enter the premises or anything like that, it's just straight off the street address. We don't
Okay.
include a lot of block.
Yeah.
But when he goes to record it, once it's recorded on that lot and block, nobody can come and say, oh, see, this says lane and I have it down as drive. That can't be argued out. There's no getting around that. So a couple items before we get to the business at hand. I actually do have 4 folks that are getting ready to finish up their terms. Got Mark's going to be finishing up in December. Duquesne is going to be finishing up in December. Kyle Rogers and Casey Smith. So we would be more than happy to have you guys renew. Hey, nudge, you know all feature.
When do the renewal?
Oh, yeah.
Are they all closed?
Oh, can you already see them?
Yeah, September 20th. If you haven't re-upped and you want to re-up, you have to file with the city secretary's office by September 20th.
I usually get a notice when I'm up.
Yeah, I feel like I get one.
Yeah, I got the notice by email. I already submitted.
Oh, okay.
Did you get one? No?
I have to check my.
Inbox?
Yeah, check the
My
junk
wife.
too.
Oh.
She handles everything.
Maybe she didn't want you to apply again, and didn't tell you.
Well, why would she do that?
I don't want to free fajitas. I want free fajitas.
Why would she?
She goes, well, especially if she figures you're not, I know where he is and he's not at home. What could be better than that?
She wants me to push for that retirement.
I understand.
No matter what, I mean, this is an invaluable service that you guys are providing for the city and for our citizens. You know, it is a required board for the city, and if we don't have enough people, hey, Michelle.
Hi.
And if we don't have enough people to fill the board, then that's gonna be nothing but negatives for everybody. So we absolutely appreciate you all, and we appreciate your time and your effort coming into this.
Oh, you want something?
How long did we commit for, by the way?
It's always 2 years.
2 years?
Yeah, it's 2-year commitment, and then it's up for renewal. If you choose not to, we absolutely understand, but we prefer that you choose to continue to provide the service to the city.
Sounds good.
And the other bit of bad news is, I don't know if you guys know, the ISO, it's for our city's insurance. The ISO goes through, it evaluates municipalities on not just their fire departments, how close you live to the fire station, what the response time for fire station is, but also the building inspections department and how the building inspections department functions. These items put together, if they score high, means you pay less in your homeowner's insurance. And the same for commercial projects. If the city can do better, then your rates go down. One of the requirements for us to be able to get a good ISO rating is I have to provide you all training. So that's the bad news. I'm going to be putting it together in a PowerPoint presentation, probably kick out one every 2 months, and it's just an hour's worth of viewing. And then you guys would just email me, let me know after you're done viewing. And we'll just record it that way. Nobody, I actually had to sit there and, yeah, it took me an hour to go through first slide and last slide, done.
It's stuff on the building code.
Yeah.
It's the education on the building code.
Especially with us heading toward the 2024 codes. We will be calling you guys forward for that, and that's probably going to be either late this year or early next year. I imagine probably February of next year, and then in March of next year, I'll take it to the council. But looking at adopting 2024 building code cycle, we need you guys to understand what all that means, what the building codes mean and all that. And I'm trying to make it as entertaining as I can. I don't know how entertaining I can make it, because, if my wife tells me that she is having a hard time going to sleep, I'll break out the 2024 International Mechanical Code. I'm like, look, it's 2024. And she's out like a light. So, but the more you guys understand, the easier it is for you guys to make judgment calls. So, one of the reasons that you guys exist, not the only reason, but one of them is if I make a judgment call based on the building codes, and this is my interpretation of the building codes, they're supposed to be able to come to y'all, and you guys are supposed to either say, yeah, I don't know what Steve is thinking, this is our interpretation of it, or yes, Steve's interpretation is the same as ours. And you can't make that judgment call properly without actually understanding the codes.
That's a big task. That's a big thick book.
Oh, yeah, and all 11,000 pages of it, once you include state laws. It's 11,000 pages of data. I am not gonna put you guys through 11,000 pages of data. Please understand that. There's gonna be bits and pieces. Nothing says you guys gotta learn it all in one night. So bits and pieces, and like I said, I'll try to make it as entertaining as I can and try to keep it as simplistic as possible. So I'm not talking to you guys about, well, if you take this equation and invert this portion of it, take the delta H off of here, divide that by the wind speed. I'm not going to do that to you. It's just going to be the basics of how the codes function, how my department functions, stuff like that. Okay.
That's how. A lot of people don't understand how the building official, how this works. Because I deal with buyers of homes under construction a lot, and they don't understand. That's they think that you're gonna catch everything. And
Yeah, you just can't,
you
especially when you're a one-man band going through. Everybody has the things that hit their eyes the most, and it's really easy for you to see this wrong thing right here and this little wrong thing right there. It's really easy for that to happen anyway. So, it is difficult.
That's just the way it is.
Yep.
That's about it.
Well, as for tonight's portion of it, once Mark has got the ball rolling and everything, and it comes to my presentation time, I will be doing my presentation. I also have pictures from our resident who is going to be discussing them with y'all and pleading his case before the board. And I'll be operating the same slideshow. It's all part of the same PowerPoint. We do have letters from neighbors. After conferring with Bob, I'm gonna make the letters part of the presentation up front. We have 5 for and 1 against. But at the end of the day, it really comes down to whether or not it meets the ordinances and codes of the city. We did take this, before this, the city council, actually first before y'all, about a year ago. You guys voted on whether or not we were going to amend the setbacks for our accessory structures. It was approved by y'all for us to amend those setbacks. When it went to council, council approved the setback changes for accessory structures, but not for carports or garages. City council decided in June of last year that the setbacks for carports and garages were going to remain the same. Those would not be part of the changes for accessory structures. So you have to keep that in mind as well. City council has decided that they like the setbacks as they are.
So,
That means I can't have my carport either.
right, but is it the carport is an accessory structure in the side yard, is that the problem, or is it the setback or the height?
It does not meet the setbacks for its location. The side setback is, for a structure of this size is equal to the required setback for the primary structure.
But not all lots in town have carports available to them, right? It can't be in the front yard.
Correct. They cannot be in the front yard, and there are restrictions for having on the side. We prefer them on the back, but we have the ordinances that identify distances from structures, distance from neighboring structures. Unfortunately, this does not meet any of them.
It's like 10%, it's at 10% of the width of the front, so like roughly 9 feet.
That depends on zoning district, but on average, it's the same required setback as the primary structure. So if the primary structure's setback requirement is 8, then it has to be 8 foot back from that
It has to
side.
be squared off.
Let me ask you a question, because it's gonna come up. They're gonna be other neighbors that are probably gonna have non-conforming carports. How do we address well, they did it, how come we can't do it?
Well,
And that goes back into administration, is
They're
how,
all-
where your authority starts and stops, I guess, and I kind of want
Well,
to spell it out.
for his defense, he sent me several addresses, and that's also part of my presentation.
Okay,
Some of the addresses do have carports, some of them do have garages that do not meet current setback requirements. Some of them met the setback requirements when they were first installed back in 1983. That was a long time ago.
They're not
A
conforming.
couple of them are installed illegally. Our amazing code enforcement team is currently in the process of working with those homeowners on making them resolve the non-conformity.
okay.
So.
Got one because I had an answer for that. So it's not that their time is coming.
Well, it's similar to an issue that came up today. We have some areas that have like a storage shed out in the backyard, and that storage shed is integrated into the rear fence line. It's part of the rear fence, has been since, the invention of the wheel back in, 1862. Does it meet current requirements? No, it does not. So if that shed can no longer be maintained, if it's fallen down in on itself and they just can't maintain it anymore, it's gotta come down and get rebuilt. Well, it's gotta get rebuilt according to current requirements. There's no such thing as grandfather. Once it can no longer be maintained according to the codes that were in place at the time of original installation, then it has to be brought to.
But as long as it can be maintained, it is
Correct.
quote unquote grandfathered.
Yeah, if it just needs a little bit of siding, I can replace siding.
I'm talking about mine. I got one of those.
Yeah,
Gotta keep it shiny.
maintain it properly and you don't have to worry about it.
Can you elaborate, something you said, just Stan, what's the difference between an ancillary structure and a carport? Carport is its own category of.
It's an accessory structure.
Yeah,
It is, but it's different.
well, they're all accessory structures.
Okay.
However, because it's a slightly different use than just putting a lawnmower in it. In our zoning ordinance, it has a separate category. Underneath my building codes, it's primary structure and accessory structure. Those are the only 2 things. But being underneath our zoning ordinance, it has accessory structures, then it has carports and separate garages.
Doesn't have a wall on, what is it, 3 sides, man?
3 sides.
Yeah. So that would qualify.
Yeah, I think the verbiage is more than 2 sides, which means 3 or all 4.
So these generally would have superstructure and roof.
And then I'm also thinking back to the pergola one that was close to the fence, but it was a height situation on that one that got
It was
it
a setback, it was too near the fence line.
because of the
And the
height.
council changed those setbacks, and so it met the height.
But if it was shorter, it didn't need the setback, right?
It was less square footage.
Or just square footage.
One of them, they absolutely had to have something that was like 180 or 200 square foot. And at that size, it could not be as close to their property line as it was.
Does that come into play here on this one?
Similar.
Kind of,
Similar.
and
It was a setback, this is a setback issue.
Yeah.
So it's the same in that regard.
Yeah.
But it's the kind of use it's being made of the structure requires it to be in a different location, but the idea of the setback is the same.
It's the same. Okay.
so in this particular instance, the side setback is the same as the primary structure. It's
It's in the same.
supposed to be 8 foot. This square right here is the carport, there's the property line.
It's right on, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the,
There's not,
the fence, the neighbor.
I'm assuming, and I'm assuming they're gonna say there's not enough room to move it that far off the setback. Like to have that far of a setback and still have the structure.
Here's a picture.
Yeah, so they're gonna say there's no way they can move 8 feet, 9 feet over.
This is not the one we did before when you
No.
guys
No.
started the construction.
Well, no,
That was my first
this
question.
particular gentleman did an extensive amount of work, which is not part of this. Has absolutely nothing to do with why we are here tonight. But he had done a significant scope of work around the structure, trying to make improvements. This was one of them. And the rest of them, we don't have to go through BOA at all for that. It's just the carport, because the carport is existing. He wants it to remain. And he's been informed that it cannot exist where it is at. So that is why he's seeking the variance. He's already invested money in it. It's already been in use. He has, 5 people that are willing to substantiate that the carport should be able to remain. 1 individual is against. That's about it.
But you talk about this all the time, but the standard is there a property hardship on the lot that would justify?
And that's,
And that's,
he's loaded with personal hardships, but none of them are property hardships.
Does he have a garage?
yes,
And that is included in the presentation. It's got a 2-car garage already. But his pickup truck will not fit in the 2-car garage. And that's why he built a carport, is for his pickup truck, so it doesn't get damaged in the
I
hailstorms.
get that too, mine won't fit either.
In my other house, similar truck based on the photos, same truck wouldn't fit in our garage front to back, it was too long, so
Yeah.
could be the case.
And the grandfathering in of a previously built structure doesn't apply here. 'Cause
Again,
you
there's
know-
no such thing as grandfathering.
Well, didn't we pass something where the duplexes all had carports and they were allowed to keep them?
specific
No one was
to,
allowed.
That was in a-
specific to a zoning district.
Yeah, and that was because that particular zoning district was, all the houses were constructed in such a manner that they couldn't fit a car in. Once you pulled in, you couldn't open your doors to get out. So they ended up getting the variance for the carports just for that subdivision.
Well, and that's where I was just gonna say, if the vehicle is too long to fit in his garage and their garage door shut, I mean, would it be a similar hardship to
Well,
justify?
it's the difference between I can't fit a car in there at all and I can't fit the car that I own.
Oh, interesting.
So that even if they were driving, like a Fiat,
I got you.
they'd have to get the Fiat all the way up against one side and fold the mirror in just to be able to open the door enough to be able to sneak out.
Interesting.
So what would we consider a property hardship?
Creek runs through the back, so you wouldn't have access. The size
So
of
it has-
a specimen tree, there's a case law that a tree that was a specimen tree, they called it, was like 300 years old, would have to be cut down. It's something that is unique to the property, not unique to the owner,
Right. And the truck is unique to the owner.
and the truck's unique to the owner.
What's the, pardon my ignorance here, what's the reason for the setback rule?
Is light, space, fire break.
Fire, okay.
No matter what, pretty much every building code has it, you have to have at least 10 feet between structure
Yeah,
and
yeah,
structure.
I never knew what the setback, reason for the setback was, and
No.
that makes sense, the
Some
fire break makes
acts,
sense.
so that guarantee property owners access to the side of the house
Mhm.
on both sides,
Yeah.
and it's fire break.
Yeah, that's kind of.
Actually, also, don't kind of go down that rabbit hole of, is this, you know, the validity of a zoning ordinance, that's up to planning and zoning, you know, refer them to them and keep going.
Yeah,
You know, it's just, you know, this is the,
this is the rule, this is the law.
this is the zoning ordinance that we're assigned to protect right now.
Yeah, and some of it's just my curiosity as we approach these
Sure.
things, like
Yeah.
what would constitute a hardship that would result in a carport? We have one example with the Fiat garage, as it were.
Somewhat the lay of the land could do that too, if it was rolling, it wasn't flat, so that the building envelope had to be over here, that might be grounds, because
Okay.
that's what nature gave us.
Gotcha.
So that's it says the topography, like I say, there's case law on it. The lot is weird shape because of where it's located, because the slope, those kinds of things,
Yeah.
that the back of the property is narrower than the front, that it's pie shaped, and that's because of creek drainage, floodplain. If the government were to come in and take part of the property by widening the street, that's hardship. Something that's not self-imposed, but something that somebody else imposes on you. So if you buy the house, knowing the house, you're presumed to know the law, and you're presumed to know the setbacks under the zoning ordinance when you buy the house, so you've kind of bought into what you got.
Okay.
And if there was, say FEMA said, you know, we need to take the back portion of that, and now floodway or floodplain, and he's got a pool back there, so I can't put my pool back there now. That might be a hardship, because that was something that a regulation was imposed by the state, or by the federal government. That would constitute a hardship, in my opinion.
And one of the most difficult things for us is trying to navigate what we can and cannot permit. If we say yes to one individual having something and they don't have a legitimate, you know, there's no other way I could have had this, then the next person that comes through, if it ends up going to court and the judge says, well, have you allowed somebody to do this before? And we say, well, yes. And it's like, well, what hardship did they have? Well, they didn't really have one. Well, you know, the judge will say, well, I guess we're done here, aren't we?
Well, you waive the requirement. Yeah, see, you have to, who built the pool?
Pool's pre-existing.
To who? It wasn't there when the house was built. It wasn't there when God put it there. Someone built that pool.
No,
It was the
it's
pool
pre-existing to this homeowner. I don't know which year the pool was
Well,
built, but it's previous to this owner.
Anyhow, he could put his shed in the back, right?
Telling the pool.
Or someone didn't. I'm saying, someone decided to put that pool there. That's not a hardship. He bought the property knowing, because it restricts his ability to put in a carport in the back. Because he would have enough space in the back. He'd have enough space over there with it. What is this thing? A trampoline?
Trampoline, maybe?
Yeah.
Could you put a driveway back there?
Try something creative.
I mean, there are options. Some are less expensive than other ones.
Yeah.
But it's not a monetary hardship. There are some monetary things that apply now that haven't before. But it has to be more than 25% of the value of the property. And
Yeah, I'm
this
assuming
ain't
a
that.
driveway on that side would be across property line, probably pretty expensive though.
It'd be close,
I did not know about that change. I'll have to make a note.
yeah.
Yeah, you told
It
us
was
about that about a year
Yeah,
ago.
It was effective September 1st of last year.
What was that again?
That if more than 25%, if the cost of providing an improvement is more than 25% of the value of the property, can be considered. It's not determinative, but it could be considered, which means there could be a financial hardship.
that the case
It would
here?
have to be substantial,
That's-
25% of the property value of this lot would
Yeah.
be significant.
Well, with the way property values have been going, that covers a lot.
So normally financial hardship's not the basis of grading, it has to be a property hardship.
So you mentioned if the pool wasn't there, he could build a driveway back, but then he'd still need to be, the carport, if he were to
It
build.
would have to go in the interior.
Yeah, it would still have to go
It'd
in.
still have to meet setback.
Yeah. But it could be done.
Well, the question for today is whether or not what has been erected can remain.
And he did it without a permit.
Correct.
Well, your equity kind of goes away.
Yeah.
Because had he come in to check, we told him he voted.
And keep in mind that this structure is 44 years old and nobody in the previous 44 years required this hardship.
What I don't understand is how come contractors don't tell them that they need permits before
They
they.
don't care.
Because they, as the homeowner, they're trusting the contractor doing whatever they're supposed to.
Yeah, sometimes that they just assume that whoever, it's like, we've got a lot of fences, Mark, that get built. And we just assume the contractor knows they have to come to the city and get a fence permit, and they don't. And then they get to see Desiree.
At minimum, once every 2 weeks, we get permits coming through for works that have already been completed. No permit was in place for that scope of work. And we just work with them to the best of our ability. We have one gentleman who owns a duplex. Contractor came through, charged him extra for the permits that he never obtained. Tied onto the existing structure, put on these roof extensions over the entryways on the other side of the duplex where the main door is. Since it's tied onto the primary structure, they've got to get an engineer because they've changed all the structural loads for that structure now. So the engineer comes out, the engineer does an assessment, and the engineer provides a letter that clearly states that what was constructed does not meet the bare bones minimum of building codes. And his recommendations are to do further destructive inspections so that he can actually design what it's going to take in order to fix this and get it to meet the codes. And now he's, the homeowner, we've met with him multiple times, he now has a contractor who's actually going to separate them out. He's going to close up the original structure, put it back to original conditions, and put in additional supports for those patio covers so that they can be freestanding patio covers. And we're gonna work with them through the construction process to get everything inspected and approved. So. But that was a lot of headache and heartache for somebody who paid extra for permits.
And I might be stuck on this, but I'm gonna go back one more time. So if we could determine this carport was built in 1978, and it was illegally built, and there was no permit, and it wasn't in code then, do we have, how far do we go back to enforce? Hey, you've got to remove
I
this
can
structure.
issue citations for anything that is less than 2 years old.
Less than 2. Okay, that answers that question.
Once it gets beyond 2 years old, well, it is now a toddler. That goes on to somebody else, and usually the bank.
And then that ties back to it can't be maintained, and it has, you know,
Yeah.
then it has to.
It's illegal, technically.
So a good example is people who finish out the garages. We have tons of places that, and every municipality has it, where people go in, finish out the garage, they turn it into their man cave or their game room or their guest bedroom, and now they no longer have a garage. Well, it was done back in 2012, it's now almost 2025, I can't issue citations for that. But unfortunately now they're trying to sell the home. It has been found out that they never got permits for that conversion. So now, in order for them to be able to sell the property, the buyer's finance company is saying, well, you gotta get a permit, you gotta get into compliance. And now I'm dealing with the homeowner at the front counter, informing them, well, dude, I'm sorry, everything that you've done now has to be brought up to current code requirements. And start explaining out everything that is pretty standard for a garage conversion that would be required. And for our municipality, that would also include a form of garage. Because just about every single zoning district we have requires a enclosed garage for that structure, and they've got to figure out how to squeeze one in.
It's like the case we had where they wanted to operate like a
The,
elderly care situation, right? And they wanted to convert the garage to
Yeah,
extra room
that's
to
right.
have more
Bedroom space.
bedroom space.
He looks like he has room to add on though, to get the
You may
extra.
not be able to.
Yes, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Rentals as well.
Can knock the
So in this
interior
case,
out.
this got built without a permit, but then the homeowner applied for a permit about 10 months later?
Code went through, complaint came through, code went out, informed him of the various violations on site. And we're working with him through building permits for everything else. This is the only one that needs to come to y'all because it's the only one that he really wants to be able to keep it, and it really does not meet our requirements.
The garage is ready to go.
The other portions, the front patio covers, front flat work,
So this-
rear rear patio cover and rear deck. He's got an engineer involved. They're gonna get the inspections performed through the professional engineer. The professional engineer is going to provide us a letter stating that it meets the codes. So we're getting compliance through all of that. Like I said, the carport, it just doesn't meet our requirements, so that's being brought to y'all.
Man. On the back end, would there be any other avenues? I guess you'd have to go through the council to grant a very specifically worded statute
Well,
that
yeah,
applied
either-
specifically to his
either
law.
we need to change the ordinance, or he needs to take it down.
We're gonna take it to court.
Go
You
ahead,
can try taking it to a judge.
go ahead. I'll be happy to go downtown. I go down every day.
So what's the resolution of the other homeowners that are in violation? What
We're
happens?
still in
Same
process with
thing?
those. We're still in process with those.
Yeah, if they're 2 years, that's why I was asking. They said 5 other houses, well,
Yeah.
And well, you know, of the ones, of the examples that he provided, and this will all be part of my presentation. One of them was constructed in 1978 with the garage in that location. We have the original plans for it, that shows it. Another one was built in 1979. Another one was built in 1982, and it had its own setback requirements at that time. Another one was built in 1982. Another one is in a planned development, is PD 289C zoning district, which has completely different requirements, and it is part of the primary structure. It's not a carport, it's the primary garage. He also gave one address that we could not find, it's not in the city.
So basically, if Moore was still not a paved road, you probably made it in, yeah.
You know, or, you know, it was, you know,
When Denton Tap was 2 lanes.
Right.
it was 2 lanes if it's, you know, 2 horses, not cars.
How were you able to determine what year those other carports were?
Well, amazingly enough, our laserfish system actually has a lot of the original plans and old permits included. So when I go back and open up the permit, and lo and behold, there's plans from 1979 that show that structure and that garage, don't score. Or a couple of them, just going through normal business, has nothing to do with this particular project, but going through different locations throughout the city, I can go back through. I may not have plans, but I've got inspection results from 1983 for the primary structure, and then lo and behold, 1984, I've got inspection results for a shed. And the shed is included on their site survey. So there's different ways of getting around it, but we got very lucky with having some fantastic records collected here in the city.
I got this.
If y'all are ever doing a scope of work and you need a property survey, there is at least a 50% chance that we'll have one on file. I get a lot of homeowners looking for site or property surveys so that they can provide me plans for like fences or sheds. I'll go back through, and sure as heck, I'll have like a fence permit from 1982 with the site survey on it, and I just forward it to them.
For example, the pool that you guys were just talking about, we just looked that up, it was built in 1980. So.
One dream.
And that's just, you know, 10 years ago.
Anything else?
You can close your workshop and see you all out there at 7.
Mark,
So it's immediate.
I don't think we call.
Oh, immediate
roll.
following.
Oh, can we go ahead and go, okay, we'll call roll now, so. I'm here. Michelle? Casey Smith?
Here.
Kyle Rogers?
Here.
Greg Blahus?
Here,
Did I say that right?
pretty good, yeah.
Yeah, close enough, right?
Bill Kim?
He answered.
Bruce Eckerly?
He's out.
Okay, these are all alternates. Sean Hester? and-
Here.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Cool, all right. All right, let's go ahead and close the work session and we'll open up the regular session.
Go up there. Have fun. Yeah, question.
Okay, it's 6:47, Thursday, September 5th. Board of Adjustments work session is closed and the regular meeting is now open. Item number, okay. So item number 4 is citizens' appearance. Is there anybody here that has anything to say to the board for anything other than the case before us today? Okay, as there's none, we'll go on to item number, item number 5, that's the approval of the December 8th, 2022 minutes. Has anybody had a chance to look over those? Okay, any questions about that or a motion to approve those minutes?
I move to approve those minutes.
I have
A
motion.
second.
I have a motion to approve and I have a second. Okay, all in favor of approving the minutes? Okay.
Aye.
Minutes are approved. Thank you. Item number 6. This item is to consider the approval of a variance request from Article 35, Section 12-35-5 of the City of Coppell zoning ordinance to allow for a 10-foot 6-inch by 21-foot carport approximately a foot from the adjacent property line shared with the property address at 548 Arbrook Lane, with said carport being located on the property address as 552 Arbrook Lane, which is North Lake Woodlands, 3rd Section, Block 4, Lot 18, as requested by the property owner, Derek Bonneau. Did I say that right? Yeah, way to go. Okay, I'm French. Okay, before we get started, anybody who's going to speak before the board, please stand up and take the oath, please. Anybody going to speak before the board? Steve. Okay. So, raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give before the Zoning Board of Adjustments is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Yes. Thank you. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Steve Schubert to present the case.
Good evening. I am Steve Schubert. I'm the billing official for the City of Coppell. This variance is sought by the property owner of 552 Arbrook Lane, Derek Bonneau. He requests a variance from the City Ordinance, Article 35, Section 12-35-5, to allow for an approximate 221 square foot carport on this property closer to the side property line than the distance allowed by said ordinance. Subject property is single-family residence on the eastern side at Arbrook Lane, just north of the intersection of Arbrook Lane and Meadow Creek Road in a SF12 zoning district. There are no unique geographic features to this property. Primary residential structure was constructed in 1978 as part of Section 3 of North Lake Woodland subdivision, being Block 4, Lot 18 of said subdivision. This originally came through to us through a notice for work having been done on the property. At that time, we started working with the homeowner, Derek, in order to try and get this into compliance. Through plan review, everything else, it was identified that the carport was much closer to the property line than it is permitted. One of the plan review comments while getting this through the permit process was that we needed an exact distance measurement from the side property line to the beginning of the structure, the vertical supports for the structure. We still have not gotten that on file yet, but it is quite close. The city was made aware of it back in August of 2023, and I've got all the data here on when we conferred with him, when the permit was applied for, when it was denied, and subsequently Mr. Bonneau applying for the variance on May 2nd of this year. A section of ordinance that we're referencing, 12-35-5, states that garages and carports that are 150 square foot in area or more shall observe the following regulations. Minimum property line setbacks, side, the same as the minimum setback required for the main structure unless the garage carport has side alley access, which this does not. Then the side setback on that side shall be no less than 20 feet. And then subsection 3, 10 feet from the main structure on an adjacent property. In this particular instance, this accessory structure does not meet either of those. The minimum setback for that zoning district is 8, albeit the primary structure is not 8 feet off the side property line, but their minimum required setback is 8. These are examples of the plans that we received for the carport. As you can see, that does not include the dimension from the side property line. And through conferring with him, he did provide us references, other properties. He does have a presentation to provide after I am done. I'll help him out with that. But we did go through and looked at his references and verified whether or not those met. First one was 517 Arbrook Lane, which is a semi-attached garage that was part of the original construction back in 1978. 553 Lee Valley, that one I could not quickly identify which portion of this was being referenced. However, it is basically as it has sat since 1979 when it was erected. 333 Meadow Creek, this was built in 1982 and currently stands as it was reviewed and approved back in 1982. This particular one, you can see the shed off to the side right here. That one was permitted as a storage shed back in 1982. 109 Meadow Creek, that is 2005 construction. It is not in an SF12 zoning district such as this structure. It is in a planned development, it is PD 289-C. This is not an accessory structure, this is the primary structure, and it was approved for that location on that lot line at that time. I also referenced 525 Oak Ridge. Unfortunately, I was not able to find that in the city limits. I also looked at 525 Oak Grove to see if perhaps it was just a mistype, and I couldn't see anything on 525 Oak Grove that would be anything similar to this particular occasion. As far as we can note, there is nothing on this site that would predicate an allowance or anything for the structure to exist in its location, and we leave that up to the council to make an educated decision on how they would like to proceed.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Schubert from the board?
Yeah, quick question. It was built in 2022 at some point, so likely more, I guess, more than 2 years ago. So does the application for permit putting it in 2023 put it under review for the city officially?
Once we have noted that the work was performed and we make notice with the homeowner or resident that there has been something notated on their property, then that starts that entire process.
Okay.
One thing I would like to add is we have received emails and letters from neighbors. Oops, I went too far back. We have a resident from 548 Arbor Lane who is not in support of the variance being granted. We have a letter from a resident stating that David Kevinus, who lives at 552 Arbor or sorry, he doesn't live at 552, but he is in favor of the carport being allowed. Another one from a Aiden Bailey that is in support of it. Another one from Claudio Campos that is in support of it. And another one from Camille Penniman, who is in support of it. And Sarah Hicks at 564 Upper Brook that is in support of it. So we have received notices from other peoples in support of maintaining the carport as it stands.
Thank you. Any other questions for the building official?
I have a question, Mr. Chairman. 8-foot required setback on this property, correct?
Yes.
And how close is the carport to the property line?
Currently, it is undefined. All we know for sure is it is approximately 1 foot.
All right, so he's seeking a 7-foot variance to the 8-foot side yard setback requirement, correct?
Yes, to the best of our knowledge. As stated, we never got the definitive measurement from the property line to the start of structure, so it is only an approximation.
Any other questions? Okay, before I go any further, I want to explain about variances so everybody understands where we're coming from. Variances are only permissible if strict application of the zoning ordinance would cause an unnecessary hardship. And when considering a hardship, we're talking about a property hardship. A variance is not authorized merely to accommodate highest and best use of a property, but when the zoning ordinance doesn't permit any reasonable use of the lot. And so when we determine whether or not a property hardship exists, we have to determine, is the hardship self-imposed? Is the hardship unique to the property? You know, it can't be financial in nature. And it can't include a property that cannot be used for highest and best use or for frustrated development objectives. It's got to be something that you can't reasonably use the property for. So with that in mind, we've heard from the building official. Now I'd like to hear from the applicant, please. If you'd stand up and state your name for the record, please, and the microphone.
My name is Derek Bonneau. I'm the owner of 552 Arbor Brook Lane. Thank you guys, first of all, for being here and taking the time to hear this request. We moved into the home in 2019. My wife and I both grew up in Coppell, and we moved back to Coppell to be closer to our family. And when we bought this house, we were unaware that the garage was not going to fit both of our cars. It's, a pleasant surprise after we moved into the house. And immediately started having to deal with things like hail damage. And then you can see it from the photo that was on when we came in, but our neighbor, who's the same neighbor who is not for this carport, her trees are over our driveway, and so my truck, where I park, it's the only place I have to park my car, they're hit by her pecans. And so after a lot of damage to the paint on my truck, a lot of damage to the hood and the front of my truck, I had been driving around the neighborhood, and I'd seen 9 different carports, garages, that came right up to the property line or within a foot or so. And so I just assumed that's a great idea. And so we built a carport, had a friend that he works with steel, does a lot of construction in North Texas. And I said, here's kind of the specs, the looks, can you put something together? And he did. And then I guess it was about this time a year ago, we received a letter in the mail that we had built something that wasn't to code. We hadn't pulled permits, so I came up the next morning and apologized and got more information. At that point, we've kind of been going through a process for this and a couple other things that we did on the property that we didn't know we needed to pull permits for. But with this specifically, some of the information that I think is missing was because in that conversation, and forgive me if I'm wrong, but in that conversation, we said, let's wait till we come to this point of the process. And if it does get approved, then we'll go through the process of pulling plans and having engineers come out and search all of that. So that's why we're here today. My truck has been parked, in this same spot. I'm not parking any closer to my property line than I was before the carport. I'm just parking on my driveway. We just put the carport over where I park. It's a beautiful carport. It's built out of great material, steel, wood. And, the frustrating thing in all this, and not that this probably is going to weigh into your decision, but this neighbor, when we bought the house, we immediately started noticing some tension with her and other neighbors, and we just continued to try to be neighborly and try to be kind to this neighbor. One day, she cussed out my little boys, who were 9 and 11 at the time, for their balls playing in the front yard, soccer balls, footballs, basketballs, for them going into her yard. And I thought, surely she didn't cuss them out. So I go over and have a conversation with her, and now I'm getting an earful. And I believe in killing people with kindness, and so I didn't get into it with her, and I just said, hey, we're going to do everything we can to keep their balls out of your yard, but at the same time, hopefully you can be respectful. These are little kids playing in their yard. Fast forward, one night we get a knock at the door, and it's the Coppell police. And she's called the police on my 9 and 11-year-old because of balls in her yard. And so I asked the police officers, I said, what do we do? And the response was, well, your kids are going to have to find somewhere else to play, because she's saying this is destruction of private property. And I said, on what account? And he said, well, the balls are rolling on her grass. And I said, okay, well, with all due respect, officer, I'm not going to tell my kids they can't play in their own front yard. I bought this property. They're kids. They're not doing anything wrong. And I've told them, do not go in her yard, to her request. Her request was, if a ball comes in, they don't grab it. And I said, yes, ma'am. So we built, and spent a lot of money, we built a huge net to just protect balls from going in her yard, which solved the problem. And just have continued to do everything we can to be neighborly. I called the previous homeowners and asked them, I said, did y'all ever have any issues with this neighbor? And he said, that's actually the very reason we sold that house, is we couldn't take it anymore. So they moved out of Coppell, which is unfortunate. They were a great neighbor. And if we can read some of the letters, and I have a neighbor here with me now, you know, there's been many neighbors in our neighborhood that have had issues with this neighbor. So for me, it's not only an issue of wanting to protect my car from damage, but it's also just an issue of not wanting to continue to be bullied by this neighbor that we've tried to do nothing but be extremely kind to. But yes, I have some photos, if I could show those, that I submitted of these carports. And these are all within probably a mile and a half tops of our home. So this is my carport that we built. And then if you can keep going. So this was a carport that is maybe 2 blocks from our house. And that one's probably the furthest from the property line of all the ones I'm going to show you, and keep going. This one is pretty much right on the property line, within maybe a foot or two. There's another one right around the corner from our home. And this is actually, if you can go back, that's actually the one that gave me the idea, because it's right around the corner. We see it all the time. There's another one, that's a garage. That's the one that's probably the closest, just like mine. Another one, very close. And if you could go back, you said this is a shed. I have seen a car parked in there before. I don't have a photo of that, though, to prove it. And keep going. Another one, that's right at the end of our street. This was the one, you showed a photo of Steve, and I guess they hadn't built the carport when that photo was taken, but there's the carport that comes right up to their property line. You can see it right up against the fence. That's another one that's right up against the fence. And then this is the letter from our neighbor. I don't know, do you want me to read these letters? Okay. So these are from just neighbors in the neighborhood. A lot of them are really frustrated, one, because they know our family. They know that we're a great family, 4 kids, loving family, do a lot to support the city, help out in the city, and they're just outraged over, not at you guys, not at the city, but just over another issue with this neighbor. So that's where a lot of these letters came from, and I just asked them, I said, hey, when you write your letters, please don't give any bad ill intent toward the city. Y'all are just doing your job. I completely get that. And I told them, you know, be respectful about this neighbor next to us, but if you would, just let them know that you've had issues too. So yeah, just several letters from the neighbors. I thought there were more that came through, so I don't know if this is all of them. And if I need to provide more, I'm happy to. What's that? Sure, yeah. So this is Claudio. Claudio lives right across the street. He's an architect as well. So I'm going to read his words for him as he stands behind me in his accent. No, I'm just kidding. To whom it may concern, this is Claudio Campos at 555 Arborbrook Lane, across the street from Derek Bonneau's house at 552 Arborbrook Lane. As a neighbor and with a degree in architecture, I want to express my approval to Derek's carport structure. The structure has been done with durable materials, steel, and nicely finished with the metal roof and a wood screen against the neighbor property, following the property fence's design. All has been painted black, matching the house finish and style. The carport is recessed more than 20 feet from the construction setback line and main house structure. The height and width of the structure is balanced against both sides, the neighbor and Derek's house. You cannot easily distinguish it from the street. Carports are commonly and mostly well done in our subdivision. I think this one is nicely done and doesn't affect the curb appeal of the street. That's Claudio's, and if you could go one more, Steve. I'll just read this last one. To the city, I'm writing to provide my support for the carport variance requested by the Bonneaus, the owners of 552 Arborbrook Lane. I live across the street from the Bonneaus at 559 Arborbrook Lane. The Bonneaus house is an updated, modern home that is immaculately maintained. The carport they built matches the aesthetic of their home, and it is no way unsightly or overly large, nor does it structurally or visually impose on their neighbors. And I'd just like to put a pause there. I am curious what their argument is or why they're opposed to it, because I don't see what it is at all doing to harm their property. So I'm not sure if that's in their letter. I haven't seen it. These are at least, or there are at least 9 other carports in our neighborhood alone that are as close to their neighbor's property as the Bonneaus. It would be unfair to the Bonneaus who were forced to remove their or if they were forced to remove their carport. While I'm sure it's not a factor to your decision-making, it should be noted that the Bonneaus are an incredibly kind, respectful family with 4 lovely children. Their neighbors at 548 have repeatedly taken issue with balls in their yard, children playing in the streets, and the like. Frankly, the things that make the neighborhood so special for families. This complaint simply feels like another way to erode what is special about our neighborhood and Coppell in general. Yeah. So anyways, there's several other letters like that. And in regards to, sorry, what did you say y'all take into consideration for variances? Was it harm or?
As far as what the hardship is, it's got to be a property hardship. It can't be self-imposed. It can't be economic in nature. The hardship has to be unique to the property.
Yeah.
Which makes it impossible for you to reasonably use the property.
So the hardship would just be, like I said, I've got to park one of our 2 cars somewhere, and, I've asked them to cut their trees back. Absolutely not, they said. So I don't have anywhere to park unless I'm going to park in front of my street, which is about to get problematic because we have 4 kids and 2 of them are now teenagers, and so we need even more space to park cars. So that's going to be a hardship. What's that? No, I'm not planning to sell. Yeah, no. So that's a hardship, and I don't know, really maybe I should file a variance for some new neighbors, because the real hardship, I'm just kidding. Okay, that's all I have to say. Thank you guys so much for what you do.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant?
I have a question maybe for the applicant, but maybe directed for city if we're aware. If there is a perceived negative impact, I don't know if we would call it a hardship, but the trees over their lot, that's their right to cut them over their property? Do we know?
I can officially say that that is a civil issue.
Okay, making sure. Thank you. That's more for me. Apologies.
What was that?
If a tree overhangs from your neighbor's property onto your property, you have the right to cut it at the property line.
I knew that. Again, I just want to treat others the way I'd want to be treated, and I know how outraged she would be if we did that, and it's just not worth it to me. And I told the people that we bought the home from, then when they told me that they moved, I said, well, we're not moving, so hopefully we can figure this out, and hopefully we can win their affection and kill them with kindness, but we have been unsuccessful thus far.
Mr. Chairman, before we go, we'll take the slides of the applicant and the slides of the staff as presented and admit those into the record for
Please.
this case.
Yes.
So Steve, if you could make sure that City Secretary has both Mr. Bonneau's presentation and your presentation included in the record.
They absolutely do. That was forwarded earlier today as one file, so it'll be easy to save.
Okay. And, Mr. Chairman, you'll admit those into the record in this case, is that correct?
Yes.
Thank
Yes,
you.
please admit all those attachments into record, please. And any other questions for the applicant? Is there anybody here to speak for the variance or against the variance? Okay, last call before I close the, yes, ma'am. Did you swear in? You can swear in and say something.
Mr. Chairman, just so you know, anyone that speaks has to be sworn in, because this is testimony,
Yes, ma'am.
so.
So do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give before the zoning board of adjustments is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. Step up to the microphone, please. State your name and address for the record.
This may embarrass my son because I'm his mother, but my husband worked for the
Ma'am, we
city.
need your name and
Oh,
your address for the
sorry.
record.
Penny Bonneau,
Yes, ma'am.
345 Lakewood Court, Coppell, Texas, since 1992.
Thank you.
And
Please
ma'am-
proceed.
Ma'am, you have 3 minutes.
Pardon me?
You have 3 minutes to speak.
3 minutes, okay. His dad worked for the city and he was economic development. We taught our children to respect other people's property from the day they were little. You do not ride your bikes in people's yards. So he was raised with a firm hand on that we do not get in other people's yard, unless you're invited to play and stuff. That was the way I was raised, probably the way some of y'all were raised as well. And I just want to say, I went to these people the day they moved in and told them what wonderful neighbors they were going to have and how blessed they would be by them. And they've been nothing but really mean and short of an explanation. I just had to say that as a mother.
Thank
Thank
you.
y'all for being here, and thank you for listening.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, sir.
Okay,
Did you,
I can swear.
okay. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give before the zoning board of adjustments is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God. Thank you. State your name and address for the record, please.
Okay, my name is Claudio Campos. I was one of the one that wrote the letter. I live at 555 Arborbrook Lane, Coppell, Texas, right in front of Derek House. I actually remodeled my house a couple of years ago. I did a big addition. It's kind of contemporary for the street. We moved there because we really like the street and the neighborhood. So I agree with everything what was said about the neighbor and the problem that Derek has, but I want to talk more about architecture. If you can put the picture that Derek sent about his carport. So I want to talk a little bit about the architecture and the condition of the carport in relationship to the street. The carport is more than 20 feet setback from the line of construction of the house. Where the house is located is 20 feet. And then that's kind of the setback that we normally have on our street. So then you need to add probably another 20 feet from the street. So it's really at the back of the house. This picture, like you see, is taken right there from the existing garage. So it's in front of it. From the street, you barely will see because you have big trees from the neighbor. That is actually what Derek was talking about. And also because the whole house is painted black, all the fences has been done the same way that they were done here on the carport. So it matched completely. So it disappeared and blend with the rest of the house. And that, on that sense, is at all not harmless to the street or the curb appeal, what I said on the letter. The house and the carport look quite well. Then the height of the carport also is in proportion with the house. If you see the soffit of the house where the gutter is, you can see that it's not much higher like other carports that there are in the neighborhood. I don't know if you remember, there was a white one that was really tall. Those are much more has much more an impactful visual to the street, and instead of this one, it's much more on the same elevation as the roof. In relationship to the fence, yes, we will agree that it's higher, but again, it blends very well with the structure of the fence.
Sir, you have about 1 minute.
Okay, and the final item is, like you can see, the driveway that he used to build his carport is the actual existing driveway that was already built, I don't know, 30 years ago. And he just make a small extension with concrete at the end. So it's using part of the concrete that was there. The carport was, like he was saying, the truck was already parking there. It perfectly matched what it was provided for him to bought when he bought the property. Okay, that's it. Questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else here ready to speak for or against the variance before I close the public hearing? Okay, the public hearing on this is closed and it's open to the board for discussion. I'll start. I'm with you on the architectural aesthetics of it. There's still this ugly thing of a setback that we still have to solve, and we have to determine whether or not there's a property hardship associated with this. I've been listening to a lot of testimony about personal hardship, and I recognize that, and it's difficult, but I'm still trying to grasp the property hardship. Andy Bonnie?
You were looking for just other general input? Maybe to balance it out, maybe reasons that you can kind of understand it. The structure's more than 2 years old, likely. Similarities to other variants seemingly from neighbors to match, while his is more minimal. I get the arguments from the citizen, from the applicant in this
I
case.
do want to point out real quick, there was no variances for those other ones.
Oh, bad word. Similar positioning to their property lines, although they might be older structures. There we go. So no, I can see the position. I guess the harder part is to justify what you're talking about as far as property hardship versus other.
That's what makes this a little difficult, but right now, we have no luxury. We're not the zoning board of it. We're not the planning and zoning. We can't just change the zoning, If we don't like the zoning, we change the zoning. What we're here to do is to protect the zoning ordinances and allow relief only when there's a property hardship. And that's what we need to find tonight, is a property hardship. And so
just my own input, while I'm not unsympathetic to the neighborly situation and so forth, our job here is within a statute, and we only have this much room, and we can't base a decision outside of that, right? And so we have to look for a property hardship that makes it impossible to make reasonable use of your property. And it can't be a personal hardship. It can't be my truck gets hit by pecans. And that's our role, and we can't go further beyond that, no matter. And that's my input.
does anybody feel like making a motion, or?
I can make the motion. Motion to approve the variance for the 552 Arbor Brook Lane property.
I have a motion to approve the variance. Do I have a second? I need to have a second.
A second.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'll admonish the board, as I always do, that it takes 4 out of 5 affirmative votes to approve. And point of clarification for the movement, it's a 7-foot variance. So that's what they need. So would you accept a friendly amendment that it's a 7-foot variance so that I can write the appropriate order if it gets approved?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll take the amendments to the 7-foot variance. And we have a motion to approve that. We have a second. All in favor? All opposed? Okay, it's unanimous. It was 5 against, and so the motion.
Mr. Chairman, I will write the appropriate order, provide it to the secretary for your signature and filing in the deed records of Dallas County.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'm sorry, the motion didn't pass. See the building official at your convenience to figure out what other alternative procedures you can take from that. Okay. As there's no more items on the agenda, we're adjourned.